of weeks ago, as summer was transitioning into fall, I started seeing the same question being repeated over and over again by different teenagers on TikTok. What shoes are we wearing this fall? And coincidentally, around the same time, one of my friends texted me, whoever goes on TikTok and asks what shoes they should wear should be sent to TikTok jail. And I responded immediately. And then we started talking about the subject a little bit more. And I was like, I don't know if I really have much more to say other than the complete obvious, which is overconsumption, trend cycles, blah, 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 blah. I can scream that until the sun explodes and no one's gonna care. It's been said 1,000 times before. I don't think it bears repeating. On a surface level, this particular trend seems like just another example of the ever-quickening trend cycle in 2024, but I don't think that it's just that. I think this trend in particular is actually a very interesting snapshot of where we are with pop culture, social media, and pop fashion in 2024. I think that the trend cycle plays a very large role in this, obviously, but I don't think that it's the whole story. One of the questions I had when looking into this is, why do these types of videos get such a high engagement? Several slow fashion content creators have responded to these types of videos saying, we're wearing what we already have in our closet. We're wearing the shoes that we already own. And while I agree with that message, I think we can all be real and say that it is not an equal and opposite response. Those types of videos just aren't getting the same level of engagement. There's a lot of mixed theories about if fashion trends come from the top down or the bottom up. Miranda Priestley in The Devil Wears Prada gives us a classic example of the top down theory of fashion. Oh, okay, I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. You go to your closet and you select, I don't know, that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you don't take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back. But what you actually don't know is that sweater is not just blue, it's not turquoise, it's not lapis, it's actually cerulean. You're also blindly unaware of the fact that in 2002, Oscar rented a collection of cerulean gowns. And I think it was Yves Saint Laurent, wasn't it, who showed cerulean military jackets. I think we did a jacket here. And then cerulean quickly showed up in collections of 8 different designers. Then it filtered down through the department stores and then trickled down into some tragic casual corner where you, no doubt, fished out some clearance bin. However, that blue represents millions of dollars of countless of jobs, and it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact, you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the very people in this room from a pile of stuff. Tour, iconic for sure. However, I think that multiple things can be true at once, and that's also what the smart people in fashion are saying. The academics. Fashion trends also bubble up from the bottom up. A classic example of this would be every single man who has never touched a hammer but for some reason decided to start dressing like my dad. Or blue jeans. Blue jeans were originally created for laborers, farmers, and for the California gold rush. Levi Strauss was actually developed with California gold miners in mind. I think that this trend in particular is a very interesting convergence of the two. Teenagers in general and in the past would wait to see what their peers were wearing, which is an example of like the bubble up effect. With these types of videos, they're acting as the elite source. Hear me out on this. So they're making this video and they're congregating all these different comments of all their different peers' opinions. Then when the comments go viral and they have 5,000 likes next to it, it's like not the same effect, obviously, as just walking around your school and seeing what the cool kids are wearing. The cool kids in this example are online users who have thousands of people at their backs, acting as sort of like the editorial board that helps push the top comments up and give you like a popular answer. And even as a passive consumer of this type of content, it's really interesting how it impacts you. Because you might not be liking the video, you might not be reposting it, but if you casually scroll through the comments, it's going to get to you when you see somebody say, Sambas are so dead, next to 5,000 likes. People who are interacting with, reading these comments, people like you and I, are not receiving this information the same way that we would from our peers, from our friends. We're receiving it as if our friends were walking around with a megaphone instead of their typical walking around with their speaking voice. If you get what I'm saying by scale here, this all brings me back to the trend cycle again, which I think is the most obvious aspect of this. We, and particularly with this example, teenagers are so obsessed with being on trend that we can't even wait for trends to trickle down to us or trickle to us or trickle up to us. We need to go online and beg to know what is cool and what isn't cool, because if we go back to school, if we go out and see our friends and we find out that what we're wearing isn't cool, that's like the worst nightmare. Because trend cycles are so fast, we can't even wait until we get to school, until we get to work, until we get to the coffee shop. We need to find out now. We need that instant gratification. We need the answer. I'm going to assume that if you came across this video, you're already like a little bit acquainted with the trend cycle and a little bit acquainted with how it's gotten faster in the past few years. But in case you haven't, I will go over it again. Basically, the trend cycle has probably existed for all of time, but officially began with King Louis XIV in France, the diva that began construction on the Palace of Versailles. The fashion trend cycle classically has always been around 20 years, which makes a lot of sense intuitively if you think about it. You're a kid, you grow up seeing these adults who are like 20-ish years older than you wearing things that just wouldn't make sense for you to wear on your child body and with your child financial resources, so that when you become older, you're going to want to wear the things that you grew up thinking are cool. I'm sure you've heard something about how the trend cycles are shortened. I really liked how Nita said it here. The nostalgia loop is getting shorter. Kids are already missing 2014. And she wrote this back in 2022. And speaking on 2022 and speaking on 2021, I think it's really interesting. Around that time, I started to notice an explosion in trend cycle content and content around micro trends, just paying attention a lot more to this in a way that I think had never been done before. Just a heightened like social awareness of trend cycle analysis, fast fashion, the quickening trend cycle, and everybody having a think piece about it. I have a theory that inadvertently this type of content may have and may be contributing to an even faster trend cycle. We exist in this like meta post-trend cycle analysis world. Word salad, I know. Now that these teenagers and young adults are aware of how quickly trends are moving, they're aware of how quickly they need to act to keep up, which would make sense that they're going online and trying to solicit opinions of people so that when they get to school, the shoes that they bought 2 months ago, they're not going to be like no longer cool. This is why I think it's an interesting mix of the two concepts. Like, you're cutting in line, you don't want to wait for the trends to trickle down to you or trickle up to you because you are aware of how quickly the trend cycle moves. But let me pose a question. Is this generation the first generation of teenagers that want to be cool, that want to be accepted, that are figuring out who they are as human beings? I don't think that this is new at all. And I understand that in some ways this feels alien. Each generation is unique, and that's true. Developmentally, these are still adolescent human beings who are trying to figure out their place in the world, who are trying to figure out their artistic inspiration, who are trying to figure out who they are and whose feet are growing. Their feet are growing. Shoes wear out very quickly. Shoes wear out very quickly when you are a teenager and you wear like sneakers most of the time and you wear the same sneakers every day. I get it. So then why aren't they just talking to their friends? Why aren't they just going to a mainstream source of media? Oh my God, it's because of echo chambers. It's because media is literally so fragmented. In 2022, there were almost 30,000 YouTubers with over 1 million subscribers. There are so many different types of culture coming at young people so quickly, and everybody's on their own algorithm, everybody's on their own echo chamber. It's not as easy as just Googling what shoes to get this year anymore, because your results are going to be filtered by the type of media that you already engage with, so you're going to be stuck on your own echo chamber. And there's so many ads, there's so much AI. Google basically doesn't work because of shit. You try searching, it's gonna be filtered by your own algorithm, by ads, by influencers, by discount codes, by niche micro aesthetics, by dark academia or whatever. Like, I can't imagine trying to be a teenager and trying to find a normal sneaker. Like, hello, like, where's the normal sneaker at? Because this sneaker is coquette, this sneaker is cottagecore, this sneaker's... Back in my day, I found out what shoes were cool from, first of all, the cool girls in my classes that I copied from Tumblr, which existed pre-algorithmic internet. And when I was even younger, I found out what was cool through mainstream physical media. Yeah, baby, we're talking about returning to print. Yeah, we're talking about fashion magazines. Print media is having a little bit of a comeback, or at least it's trying to delude itself into thinking it is. Vice magazine just started their own magazine up again. And there's a lot of like indie niche publications that are thriving, go off. I'm really happy to see it. However, I don't think it's fair to say that it's like fully back yet. Like, teenagers, young adults, preteens aren't yet using mainstream physical media again as their main source. Like, we used to have a more centralized place to go to find out what was cool, basically since the invention of teenagers as a marketing category in the 1950s. Kids don't really have that much anymore these days. Media is both so fragmented and so tainted by algorithms and ads that it's really hard to go online and try and find a mainstream source to get your information from. And I think that this is one of the reasons that we're seeing a rise in print media. It's comforting and it's nice to have like one source of mass pop culture, especially when you're a teenager and you're still trying to figure out who you are as a person. I think it makes a lot of sense why these teenagers are clinging onto these niche like micro aesthetics that we all bully them for, because they don't have like a mass pop cultural movement to respond to. I think I understand teenagers coming online and trying to make a video where they're crowdsourcing a response from as many corners of the internet as they can get, asking them what to wear. And lastly, they're human. They're children. They're trying to figure out who they are as people, and they're trying to cut through this noise that's constantly coming at them of ads, of different influencers, of different micro aesthetics. And they're trying to create their own pop culture, which I think is really hard these days. And I really applaud them for trying to do that. Why don't they just wear what they want? Why don't they just wear what's in their closet? They're trying to figure out who they are, and I think it's extremely lame to not have empathy for younger generations, first of all. Second of all, their shoes might not fit anymore. Third, the only way that you're gonna figure out your personal style as a teenager is through trial and error. As an adult, I think it makes more sense to have like a concrete sense of personal style, but when you're 17, you're just not gonna be the same person that you were when you were 16. Like, that's just such a big developmental jump that it makes sense to shift through and try different things out, and hopefully you can do it in a more sustainable way, and hopefully you can give your hand-me-downs to somebody else. I have a hard time criticizing them. I don't think it's wrong that teenagers want to fit in. I don't think it's wrong to seek answers for how to dress your growing body. Bullying people with less developed brains than you because you don't understand them is maybe the lamest and least effective way we are going to combat fast fashion, microtrends, and overconsumption. In one way, it's true that the youngest people are the most susceptible to fast fashion and their deceptive marketing practices, but we should be critical of the companies and the general pop cultural messaging that feeds into this, not the teenagers going online asking what shoes they should wear. I want to share this with you. Are today's teenagers worse than ever? Asks the slightly older generation again and again and again and again and again and again, from the beginning of time until the end of time, until the sun explodes and the worse than ever teenagers explode along with it. Times were so much simpler back in the day, back in your day, before the sun exploded and we knew how to behave. Aren't we all glad that we lived in the last peaceful time to be young? Before it was all ruined by TikTok brain rot, Instagram, Facebook, MySpace, the internet, rap, television, rock and roll, the radio, jazz, the printing press, agriculture, and leaving the cave. I'm so worried about kids these days.